When can I get a new car seat?
I don't think you're big enough to move into a booster seat yet.
But my friend has one. She's 5, I'm 5. Why can't I have one? And my sister has one, so?
I've looked a bunch of times, and I don't think you're tall enough yet or something. I don't know. I guess I can look again.
Please. I love you, Mommy, please.
I'll check again.
Yay.
Welcome to Merging into Life, where we navigate life's milestones one episode at a time. Brought to you by AAA Northeast. I'm your host, Amanda Green. So, as you heard, I've been having this conversation a lot with my daughter. At the tender age of 5, she thinks she's ready for the free and easy life of a kid in a booster seat. I'm not against it, but I am for safety. And when I look online, there are different ranges for different seats and weights and heights. This is an important one to get right, but I'm finding it really hard to get straight answers. I think back to the early days when I was pregnant, somewhere between those two phases of quiet contemplation and panic and fear. There are so many things to think of and plan for, but even at that time, I knew there was only so much I could do to prepare. Buying stuff was one of the few ways. There was the crib, a changing table, diapers, clothes, toys, so much stuff. But I can vividly remember strolling through the car seat section, picking out the biggest and best car seat I could afford, because I wanted my baby to be safe and secure like all parents do. But just like I'm finding out now, there's more to it than I thought. Even in those early days, there are things to consider past buying the quote-unquote good seat, like installation. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, almost half, 46% of all car seats have been installed incorrectly. That's a lot. And according to the same organization, in 1 year, 325 children under 5 are saved by car seats. That's music to the ears of us parents and guardians, and probably just about everyone. We know they work. So join me while we get answers to all the questions around how to use them properly, including the big one at my house.
When can I get a booster seat?
So let's bring in an expert who has installed some car seats.
Many seats, hundreds and hundreds. Definitely hundreds.
That's Adelle Zocher, a public affairs specialist with AAA Northeast. She's seen some stuff because there is no messier place than that of a child's car seat.
You know, all kinds of messes, which people are always, I'm so sorry. Oh, there's food. Listen, you have kids. I understand. No problem. So I've seen some gnarly stuff, but people shouldn't be embarrassed. It's fine. They're cars. They're lived in.
I think I'd sooner make my browser history public than let someone look in and behind my kids' car seats. But I'm happy to know this is a shame-free zone. So first things first, what kind of car seats are there?
So we have rear-facing convertible seats. That's that little bucket that we pick up baby in and we click it into the base, which remains in the vehicle. That's typically our first step. Then as the child gets a little bit bigger, we'd still like to keep them rear-facing for safety reasons. So they'll transition into a convertible seat, and a convertible seat converts from rear to forward-facing. The next step would be to turn that seat forward-facing or move up to a combination seat, which is a harness, which then becomes a booster. And from there, we transition from that 5-point harness seat into the booster seat and beyond.
So I know a lot of the safety rules and regulations vary from state to state, but are there any general universal rules that people should follow?
So for new parents, NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, is a good resource, NHTSA.gov. So NHTSA works closely with an organization called Safe Kids Worldwide. And Safe Kids Worldwide is actually the certifying body for car seat safety. And these two work together to create the curriculum for the technicians, to set these guidelines, working with organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics, hospitals all over the nation, to collect data and basically, okay, well, where is the misuse? What's happening here? What do people need? Where are we falling short? And how can we fill those gaps?
Okay, I found the site here. It asks for age, weight, height, and then gives a graph of all your options. We'll be sure to put a link in the show notes for anyone who needs it because that's really helpful.
I would also seek out a technician. So myself, certified child passenger safety technician. I'm also an instructor, so I certify those new technicians. Personally, in the classes I teach, I see a lot of law enforcement, first responders. So there's all sorts of people in the community, all sorts of organizations that involve child passenger safety. And a really great start is to find that technician so you can have them help you, assist you, show your way around the seat. My first step, I think if I was, really had no idea, I'd want to like familiarize myself with the types. And then from there, maybe what am I going to buy? And then maybe I'm going to talk to a technician and they're going to help me get that in the car.
Are there any particular models you like?
The best seat is always the seat that works best for the family, fits their price range, fits their vehicle, can be installed and used correctly every time. And any seat that a person could purchase on the market is going to meet those requirements and be safe for their child.
So you're saying when it comes to car seats, it maybe isn't worth splurging on the higher end model?
No, I wouldn't say so. It's so personal. If you want to, splash out on the $400 infant seat, that's great. If that's in the budget, or a lot of people get them as gifts, right? But to me, because that's the seat that they're going to be doing all that good stuff when they're little, I always say, if you're going to get a cheaper seat, do that. Get your use out of that. Let them kind of, grow out of that seat, right? Use it to its...
Smush Cheerios into it.
Exactly. And then transition to that convertible at a little bit later of a date, because that's a seat that could potentially take your child all the way to the end of needing a restraint, right?
Adelle, this is obviously something parents want to get right. And NHTSA says almost half of all seats are installed incorrectly. But I read that even more seats are misused. What are people getting wrong?
Depending where you look, you'll see maybe around 60%, sometimes 70% or more of misuse. But that could be something really simple, right? The car seat may be installed correctly, but the harness is not used correctly. So we've got a little bit too much slack in that harness. So right there, small misuse. Everything may be done perfectly, but that seat might not be tight enough. It might not be pulled in and ratcheted in. So there's a misuse right there. They can be very small. But again, the right seat is the seat that is used correctly and works for that family every single time, which is why tech is such a great resource to go to. Once you do it, practice it a couple times, you'll have it down pat.
So this is not the time to take the IKEA furniture approach, pulling out the instructions and hoping for the best. This is the time to do it right. So how do we find a tech in our area?
Awesome question. That information is available to you on cert.safekids.org. And from there, there's a little tab to click, find a tech. And from there, you can put your area. So for me, Connecticut, I'd put in Connecticut and it would list all the technicians and their contact information.
How about new parents with new babies? Any safety tips for them to keep in mind?
Well, one of the things, a lot of people are tempted to put some all sorts of little accoutrements in the seats, the little cute fuzzy teddy bear things and like something so they can play with that. And then we got the mirror. We as technicians will not recommend any of that stuff because if it has not been crash tested alongside that car seat, we can't be sure that in the event of a crash, any of those objects may not compromise the integrity of that seat, how it's working. Is it tight enough? Might those objects come loose and become a projectile and injure the child or somebody else in the vehicle? We do not know unless it's been crash tested. So that's why we don't recommend aftermarket products like that. Of course, it's people's prerogative. If you want the mirror, if you did your research and that's something you want, by all means. But that's the reason why. And another thing, projectiles are a big danger in the vehicle. Something even like a tissue box with those sharp edges going flying through the air as the vehicle screeches to a halt at 50 miles an hour can go flying through that vehicle and could cause an injury, certainly to a baby or even an adult.
I never really considered that. And I am someone who drives around with like just a lot of stuff in the car because we're driving, from here to there and everywhere. So limit the amount of stuff in your car is probably a great tip.
Less is more. We don't want little ones bundled crazy tight. We want them to be able to be harnessed in nice and tight. When we show new parents, I have these little training dolls. A lot of technicians will have these little squishy training doll babies. We put them in the seat and we pull the harness tight. We show them this is where we want it on the shoulders. And I always tell them they've been snuggled up, for 9 months. They like being cozy and tight. So if they become used to a nice, tight, snug fit right from birth on, that's not ever going to be a problem. What we want is to not be able to pinch any of that mesh, any of the webbing from the harness. So if your fingers kind of slip over the mesh without pinching a little piece of it, that's how you know it's tight enough.
I've had, ladies in the grocery store parking lot comment that my kids don't have a proper coat on in the winter after getting out of their car seat because you're not supposed to wear a bulky coat, right?
Exactly. Say pish posh. This is all by design. It's exactly what we tell people. Put them strapped in and put that coat on backwards, right? Slip their little arms through, have it on backwards, lay a little blanket over top of them once they're safely strapped in. But absolutely do not feel bad. All parents out there trying to wrestle with the kids in the coats, you are doing the right thing by not strapping them in all bundled up.
Even just like a fleece zip up is better than wearing like a bulky winter coat, right?
Yes. We just don't want any compression space underneath, right? So in the event of a crash, we want that harness to be able to restrain the child in the way that it's meant to. And if there's a bunch of fabric that's getting compressed down, then that means there's space between the child's body and that harness. So it's not restraining them as adequately as it should be.
Are there any other do's and don'ts you have for parents from a technician's point of view?
We go by good, better, best in terms of practice, right? So good practice is we have a car seat. We're putting our child in it. We are seeking out information. We're doing the best we can. You'll never come to see a technician and be shamed. They're going to say, good on you for trying, better on you for coming here, and we're going to get you correct. And you're going to leave knowing exactly how to do it correctly. And they'll get you comfortable. We always make people play around with the seat. We always say, have the families put their hands on the seat, have them practice lifting it up, practice with the baby doll, feel your way around the car. We ask questions like, do you park on the street? Are you going to be opening that door where your child is out into the street? And if so, maybe we'll put it on this side so that you can be on the curb here and you won't be, having traffic to the side of you.
You really think of everything.
Not every vehicle and every seat is perfectly, wonderfully compatible, but that best seat is the one that is installed correctly 100% of the time, used correctly 100% of the time. And that's another great one for parents every single time. So they see right from the jump, right, that this is something we do. Parents wear seatbelts, children are buckled in, and that becomes habit and that becomes a safe life. And when we do that, we're just increasing the likelihood that if, God forbid, we were involved in a crash, that there would be reduction in injury. The incidence of fatalities for children involved in crashes with proper car seat use is reduced significantly.
I know many parents consider buying used car seats to save money. Are used car seats as reliable as new ones? And also, what kind of precautions should you take if you're going to buy a used one?
Please don't purchase a used car seat unless it's a transaction between you and someone that you trust, implicitly, right? Going online, finding maybe, a Facebook marketplace thing. Not that the person might not be trustworthy, but you cannot know without a shred of doubt that that seat has not been compromised in any way.
Mm-hmm.
In that process of the crash, the forces being exerted upon where it's restrained, right down at those lower anchors or the seatbelt, hasn't compromised the seat in some way. So that being said, if you know the source, trust the source, the seat is not expired. All seats have expiration dates. And that's another thing. A technician will look that up. If it's missing labels, if the straps, any pieces are, a little wonky, and you can't guarantee that that seat has not been involved in a crash or compromised, we would not recommend using that used seat. But it's a great option. Seats last typically 6 years, some of them longer. So if you know a trusted source and they say, hey, I'm ready to pass this along, still in good shape, there is no problem with that at all.
And you could have some peace of mind that, yes, you did it correctly, or maybe it just needs a little tightening here or there. This is really good information. Can you walk us through how car seats help protect kids if there, God forbid, happens to be an accident?
Vehicle restraints, they're meant to kind of counteract physics, right? An object in motion moving. So we need to slow down. We need to ride the crash force down. So in a short stop or, in the event of a crash, that seatbelt rides the force down by stopping us. In a rear-facing seat, the seat itself is what takes on the force of the crash. Small pro tip, when you do install that infant seat, the bucket seat, we do not want that resting on any part of the seat in front of it, which is why I often have people do it on passenger side if, we need the driver's seat to be a little further back. Because even if it's just a small enough gap to pass like a hand through, that's adequate. Because if the back of the car seat rests on the back of the seat cannot move. So in the event of a crash, the seat would move up, rock back and forth, and ride the force of the crash down on the seat itself and not the child's body. When we move forward facing in the 5-point harness seat, the force gets ridden down basically on the child's body, but it is distributed differently because of that 5-point harness and because we tether that seat in the back of the headrest. The physics of a crash is basically why we would say rear facing as long as possible, because the force of it is on the seat and not the body of the child. And like we said, they're top heavy, their little neck and spine are a little bit weaker as they're, growing and stretching into themselves. And so that's just, all the more reason to keep them rear facing and then 5-point harness as long as possible.
It's so interesting you say that because my daughter is desperate to get out of her 5-point harness and into a booster seat. But I'm just not sure that she's ready. How do I know?
So state laws vary. Depending on where you are, the requirements for turning your child forward facing in that 5-point harness seat may be more lax than, say Connecticut, where we have pretty strict child passenger safety laws. But that best practice is always going to be keep that child rear facing longer because that offers better protection, superior protection. When they go forward facing, let's try to keep them in that 5-point harness as long as they can to try to max out in the height and weight requirements of the seat because it's offering them superior protection. And, it's a hard struggle with kids because, they want to get big, they want to ride in the booster, but
they see their friend moving up to the next level.
Exactly. But each child is so different and how they grow and what their needs are. And ultimately, since we are responsible for their safety, this is just the best thing we can do. Seek out that information, practice, ask questions, and we will provide that information and those resources and be there for people.
You have shown us how important it is to get this right. Thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your knowledge.
Pleasure.
I've learned a lot today. We're talking about child safety here, so knowing this stuff is super important. Okay, everyone, pop quiz. In a perfect world, how long should a child stay in a 5-point harness safety seat? If you said until they max out on height and weight requirements and the earliest they can move into a booster is when the state law allows it, you'd be right. Good job, you were paying attention. Next one, what's the best way to install a safety seat? If you said with the guidance of a technician, you would be correct. One can be found by going to safekids.org/inspection-stations. Another question for you. Can a parent purchase a used car seat? If you said yes, that's correct, but only if you can be completely sure that the seat has never been in an accident. The best way to do this is by buying from someone you know and trust. And again, get a technician involved to make sure it's installed properly, still in working order, and isn't expired. Okay, next question. Big, warm winter coats in car seats. Yes or no? No. Dress your child lightly so they can be buckled snugly in the seat. Ignore the lady at the grocery store in the parking lot who's commenting that your child doesn't have a bulky coat on in the winter. They're fine. Next one, because I love to be prepared, so I always have a tissue box handy, things to keep the kids occupied, teddy bears. Is this recommended in your car? No. Loose items in your vehicle turn into projectiles if you come to a sudden stop. These items have also not been crash tested with your child's seat, so it's best to keep the inside of your car as free and clear as possible. Hopefully Cheerios and Goldfish don't apply. And last question, when it comes to buying safety seats, do you look for the biggest and most expensive? According to Adelle, buy the seat that fits your vehicle and your child. As long as you properly install it and can use it properly every single time, it's the right seat for you. And as Adelle says, you don't have to spend a fortune on a seat that will probably be a little questionable as the months tick by. Speaking from experience, those things can get pretty gross, and the car seat suffers the consequences. So that's it for today. I want to thank AAA Northeast Public Affairs Specialist and Safety Seat Expert Extraordinaire Adelle Zocher. You've been listening to Merging into Life, where we navigate life's milestones one episode at a time. Brought to you by AAA Northeast with production assistance from Jar Audio. I'm your host, Amanda Green. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts and leave a review. We'd love to hear what you think. Send your thoughts to podcast@AAAnortheast.com. Talk to you next time. Hey, so I checked with an expert and she said that until you get a little bit bigger, this seat that you're in right now is a lot safer.
Oh, really, Mommy? Please?
Can we agree that since it's safer to stick with this seat, that we're gonna stay in this one for a while?
Okay, fine. Whatever you say.
Love you. Give me a high five.